Hey, welcome back to JG3 Reviews. My name is James, and I like to explore the world together with you of fountain pens, ink, and paper. And today, it is a fountain pen day, and this one may come to you a little bit out of left field. This looks all for the world like a Pilot Vanishing Point capless or a Majohn A1, and it's none of those things. Do you see what that says right there? You know, some of us had wondered, will they ever make a pen that has a retractable nib, the Jinhao folks? Well, the answer to that is yes. The answer to that, unfortunately, is also that it's just like everybody else's. I really was hoping that they would come up with their own idea, and I know sometimes that's a little bit of a hope against hope, but hey, I'm kind of into the hope against hope thing. Anyway, Jinhao has done this. They have made their own version of the capless, and so we're going to take a look at it. Whether you like it or not, whether you're comfortable with this pen or not, I just wanted to know, have they done as good a job as Majohn? I don't expect a Pilot, but have they done as good a job as Majohn? Are there differences? Hint, yes, there are. And would it make an interesting little beater pen that maybe you could mistreat more than you would mistreat your Pilot capless or Vanishing Point? If you're curious about that like I was, then stick around because we're going to spin that camera and see what we think about this pen. Here it is up close, the Jinhao 10, their version of a clickable fountain pen. And as you can see, it does, again, bear quite a close resemblance to the Pilot capless or Vanishing Point and the Majohn A1. Not quite identical, though, not as close as the Majohn A1 is to the Pilot. So let's take a look at the design of the pen, and I'll point out the differences as we go. First, you come up here to the nib end of things. It works very much the same way. When you press the knock, that trap door is pushed open by the nib and feed, and it doesn't come out quite. You see how that's not quite lined up perpendicular with, in this case, I would look at the line of the clip as it attaches to the body and the bottom here of that trap door. There's just a little bit of an angle. Works just fine, doesn't seem to have any problems, but that would be a slight difference. As you can see here with the Pilot, when it comes out, it is lined up much more perpendicular to the bottom of that trap door. Now where there is a similarity is to this is Majohn A1, which of course looks almost just like the Jinhao 10 or vice versa, in that it also, at least on mine, is a little bit crooked, maybe even more crooked than the Jinhao 10. Then as we continue down the pen, you have the clip, and you'll notice that the clip itself is different. This is just a straight clip. I actually kind of like that it has this difference. The Pilot, the original, has a pinched clip here, and in that pinch, you have a little bit more room for your grip. And for some, that will be an advantage on the Pilot or disadvantage here on the Jinhao. For me, it's a draw. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect my grip. And if the clip really bothers you a whole lot, you'll just get the Majohn that has no clip. And I still wish, like a lot of other people do, that Pilot would come out with a clipless version so that people could choose the Pilot over that Majohn. But as of yet, they have not done that. But again, this one has just a straight clip. It is nice and springy, maybe just a little bit stiff, but works really well. I've been using this pen a bit, and works just fine. You come further down and you come to the trim ring. This is where there's a difference. In both the other two pens, you have the name printed on the reverse from the clip on the pen barrel. But here on the Jinhao, it says Jinhao, much bigger, right here on the trim ring. And the trim ring itself is different from the other two, and almost looks, even though this is a separate piece, I wouldn't fault you for thinking that this is not even a separate piece, that it's just part of the barrel because it looks that tight. But this is actually a separate trim ring on the pen, and there are also color versions of the Jinhao where they have a chrome trim ring that's more similar to the Majohn here. But this one is more flush with the rest of the barrel, and again with the Jinhao name printed large and in charge there on the pen. No model number, though. They didn't put the Jinhao 10 on this side like they do with a lot of their other pens. Then, of course, it tapers, just like the others, to this trim piece, which itself varies a bit. It doesn't have nearly the angle that the Majohn's does, and it's more rounded rather than flattened. Perhaps a little bit more like the Pilot itself than the Majohn, although the chromed piece versus the matte piece, it makes it look quite a bit different. And then, of course, you come to that knock. And the click mechanism is working pretty well on this. It's not quite as smooth as the Majohn or certainly as the Pilot, but I'll let you listen. That's not bad. You hear a little bit of a something in there that you don't hear as much of in the other two. Here's the Majohn A1. Smoother, maybe a louder click, but smoother. And then, of course, the Pilot, which is the standard in this case. Smooth, definite click, and just, like you would expect, a better feel of quality. Although with the Majohn, nice and reliable, in my case anyway, no issues there. And then that Jinhao one more time. So differences, but it functions well, and I have not had dry out problems. Now, I've only let it go as many as about 5 days at one time, 4 or 5 days, and I had no dry out issue whatsoever. If you left it longer than that, well, that I really couldn't say. So it might do a longer test later on after I've done this review, but at this point, leaving it alone for a few days or 4 or 5 days at a time has not been an issue. Now, taking the pen apart, of course, you unscrew this, and one of the things that I noticed is that the threading here is not as smooth as the other two pens, but, you know, it's fine, and it looks like nice sharp threads. It may be something to do with the finish. It just has a different feel. When you take out the mechanism here, you will find that there is a converter, and all these parts are swappable, interchangeable between all these pens. But like the Majohn, you're probably going to prefer this converter to the Pilot, that Con 40 that, you know, a lot of people just don't really like that much. Would love to see Pilot improve that. The nib is basically just like the other two. I mean, there's slight differences. There's no breather hole here like you have in the Pilot, but, you know, it's pretty much the same idea that you have with those other two pens. Now, one thing you will notice about this nib is not only is it very similar to the other two, but it is also a fine. They do offer both extra fine and fine in the Jinhao. Majohn now does do a fine, but at first it was extra fine only. So I feel like Jinhao has done a better job in offering at least 2 options here at the very beginning. And of course, very similar plastic feed setup to the other 2 pens. When you go to reassemble the pen, it's really not that big a deal. You just make sure that that notch lines up, and this is not oversprung like the Majohn, so it does line up the way it's supposed to. And then screw that back on, no problem, and your pen will work just like it's supposed to. I do want to say about the finish on this pen, it's similar to this other matte black pen. This one is a much smoother, the Majohn is a much smoother matte finish. It will be interesting to me to see if there's a difference in the way that they hold up. That Majohn finish has held up well for me, but this has a grittier feel. So if you really want to be a smooth feeling matte, then you're going to want to go Majohn. But if you're somebody who lives in a climate, for example, where it's really humid, or maybe you have oily hands or something, hey, I ain't judging, it happens, then possibly you might prefer the Jinhao's finish, that grittier feeling, and I don't mean gritty in a negative sense, but just in a grippy sense. It does make this a non-slip pen. And so for me, in writing in a longer writing session with the pen, I actually came to like that grippiness because it just made an easier pen to write with. You didn't have to hold it very firmly at all. You could have a nice relaxed grip and still it'd be a non-slip grip on the pen because of the texture of that matte finish. And I think overall, that looks just fine. They do have other colors, and I'll throw a picture up here so that you can see what choices you have. But I think I really like this matte black look on this pen. All right, now for our size, no, I'm kidding. This is not our size comparison, is it? How about this? We have our Jinhao 10 next to a Platinum Curidas. The Platinum is a much larger pen. And here is a Lamy All-Star. Just for reference, lots of people have those. And then true competition to a clickable fountain pen, how about a Pentel Energel there? So a pretty normal sized pen. It's going to fit most pockets and pen holders and all of that kind of stuff just fine. Certainly more pocketable than the Curados turns out to be. And then in ready-to-go writing form, you can see that it is the most compact among these pens, but just basically a standard size. Very good balance, good ergonomics, I think, for a clickable fountain pen and a good all-around writer. All right, so after we figured out how it looks similarly and dissimilarly to the Pilot and the Majohn, then the question, of course, is, what do the insides look like and how different are they? And then the next question, of course, is, yeah, but how does it write? So that's what we're going to find out now. All right, like I said, this one has a fine nib. I'm going to have to remember what name to write down here, don't I? This is a Jinhao. And the model number is the 10, and this is a fine nib. So seems to me that they were paying attention when everybody was telling Majohn, hey, how about some variety in the nibs, not just an extra fine? So they at least gave it a fine. There is that. There are extra fine and fine nibs. The line is, about what you would expect a fine to be. I compared it to other fine Jinhaos in my collection, and pretty much it was on board with other nibs. And that's a stiff nib. Let me just try and get a little variation, although definitely not what it's made for. Yeah, there's not any. Wetness, a little bit dry, but not too bad for a nib like this. Ink today is Noodler's, because I have this giant bottle that I have not been able to work through of Heart of Darkness, a black ink, obviously. Every now and then, I'm willing to go with just a plain old black ink. Actually, I have like 3 pens inked up right now with various black inks. Some of them I really like. This one I've always felt with a name like that ought to be even darker than it is, but it is what it is. And my handwriting is not what it ought to be today, but it's not the pen. The pen is writing nice and smoothly, and that for me was probably the biggest surprise. Not because of Jinhao having a bunch of bad nibs, although, quality control sometimes, little hit and miss. I've had a ton of really great Jinhao nibs. Every now and then one will need a little bit of tuning, but I've done nothing to this one. And it's written really well. And again, there was no dry out either over a period of about 4 days. Maybe it may have been more like 5 days, leaving it alone, no issue. Now, I will say, Noodler's Heart of Darkness does not tend to dry out as badly as some inks, so there might be a little bit of a leg up on that one, but no issues. I don't know. I just find it a really easy pen to write with. So what have they gotten right? What they've gotten right is the nib. I do think that the fit and finish is not up to the standard of the other 2 pens, but it's not bad. I think for the price, it's really quite good. The question will be, will it hold up as well? Will the mechanism hold up as well? And that, well, I honestly can't tell you. This is very much a first impression review. If I were going for sturdiness, obviously, if I'm going for anything, I'm going for the Pilot first. If my budget just can't do that, I'm going for the Majohn second. Some will actually prefer the Majohn regardless, because you can get that model without that clip at all. And some people really don't like the clip. Again, I don't mind it, and so it doesn't bother me at all. But if you're looking for clipless in your capless, well, then you have to go with the Majohn, don't you? But have they made a pen that at least here at the beginning, the initial quality of the pen, does it work? It does what it's supposed to do. Mine is doing what it's supposed to do. It will be interesting to me to see, as other owners report their experience, as other reviewers share their impressions, to see, did I just get a really good one, or is this what the standard will be? Because that's always a bit of an unknown with any new pen, no matter who makes it. So it's certainly true here. But I know some of you will be very skeptical, And whether or not that skepticism is earned is not up to me. Again, I've had really great experience with a lot of Jinhaos. I've had a dud or two. That is also true. Or I've had pens that were really good in the beginning. My 599 was this way. Really good in the beginning, but the plastic just degraded after about 7 or 8 years. I mean, 7 or 8 years for a pen that cost me less than $2, it's not that bad a deal. But, it is what it is, and that pen did kind of implode on itself. What will happen with this one? Well, the good thing is it's not a huge investment, but it's not nothing either. But it's not a huge investment to try and see how the pen is going to hold up. So I'll continue to put it through its paces, and I'll let you know if suddenly the pen just gives up the ghost. But hopefully that won't be the case. The good news is this is not a Lanbateau 3088. That thing wasn't even worthy of the compost pile. It was total junk. And this is not that, or at least the one that I got is not that. So you tell me, what do you think? What is your impression? If you got one of these, they're pretty fresh to the market. If you've got one, what's your experience so far? Share all of that in the comments below, because I can't be the only curious one who wants to know. And in the meantime, enjoy your pens, keep on writing, have a great week, God bless you.